Tat.
Hello. Welcome to not the national, bloody hell, wrong company. Listen to this bull show.
Sponsored by.
This is the show that we don't practice our intros on very much, and so we definitely have issues every time we do it, and there's no way to know what we're going to say. We're talking about bullshit in the insurance world. My name is Matt Mulholland. That guy is Neck Tattoo, and that guy is Remington Huggins.
The law.
We are going to talk about bullshit in the insurance world today, possibly have a discussion about what was said during last week's episode while the defense counsel, Stephen Badger, was on. But ultimately, this show is driven by commentary. We want your questions. We want your comments. We want you to guide the conversation. We're going to go down any path you want us to. It could be a weird path. I actually like it when it's a weird path. I want you to make it weird. Please make it weird. That'd be cool for me. But you have to ask questions in the comments or we got nothing to go off of. So, Javier, hello, sir. I don't know what that means.
You want to talk about tile?
That's what he wants to talk about.
Now he's a Florida guy.
Someone else is on here.
Florida or Arizona?
Hey, Matt, before we get started, I need to hear the bull. All right. Thank you.
Almost did it again.
Thank you. I need to listen to some bull. That's all.
Yeah, that's great. Let me throw up a banner that tells people to ask us questions. So I have some cool stuff I can tell you guys about real quick, though.
What's going
on? Bam. And then there's bam. Nope. Oh, that's the wrong one. This one.
That was supposed to be in the private chat.
I got a new tool today.
You are a tool.
I am a tool. So I was playing around with this earlier on a Facebook Live, but I got in fact, I'm going to grab it. I'll be right back.
Do it.
What's going on, Big Law?
Yeah, what's going on, buddy? Nice seeing you, man. For some context to everybody out there, Matt is a massive gearhead, I guess is what they call him. He just if it's something new, he's got to get it. He's got to test it. And he should start doing that. Like when new products come on the line in this industry, they should allow you to test those products and give a honest review. I think that should definitely be in the works.
Whenever I go to conventions and I walk around the convention expo center and take a look at all the products that are out there, I definitely beat those guys up a little bit. I don't even mean to. I just automatically see the problems within it and I directly ask them about it because I'm trying to see if there is some kind of solution to that problem that isn't quite obvious. I kind of wish some people would. It'd be weird for me to hold a camera the whole time because then they probably would give me a different answer. But it'd be cool if I had like a hidden camera walking around with me every time that happened.
Get those little glasses cam that you can't tell.
That might be cool.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a coating thickness meter. In fact, I just got off the phone with somebody that was into paint thickness of some kind, but this is meant for, or what I'm planning to use it for, is to take this probe, this tiny little thing. It's got a roughly half-inch diameter head on it. I want to take this and measure the thickness of the coating on a metal panel roof, metal panel siding of some kind. And the idea being that, the metal panel would have a roughly uniform thickness of coating throughout the entire panel. But wherever there is a hail hit that stretches the metal down into the hail hit, the metal gets a little bit thinner because it's stretched. Well, so will the coating. Well, if I can actually measure the difference in the thickness of the coating inside of a hail hit versus outside of it, then I can quantify the amount of effect that hail has on the material. And the coating, especially for galvanized coatings, it's a sacrificial layer of zinc. Once that zinc is gone, then the steel underneath is able to react and have rust. So the thinner that coating is, the less lifespan that material will have. So the question becomes, for a lot of the functional damage definitions that are out there, those functional damage definitions use the term expected service life. Well, how long are the panels expected to last? Will they continue to last that long now that the coating is 30% thinner than it was before, or will it last 30% less time? I think that there'd be a lot of use in something like this. It wasn't my idea, by the way. Got this idea at a NAPIA convention, at a FPCC, a first party claims conference, actually. I don't remember the instructor's name that brought this up as a possibility. I've been playing around with it today, and I think that the diameter of this probe is a little bit too wide to fit into smaller hail hits. So the only thing I'd be able to use this on is something fairly large.
Well,
maybe
is it
2 inch
an
or bigger.
ultrasonic tester? Is that what an ultrasonic machine is? Using
So
sound?
it measures the magnetic field. So it gives me an ohm reading and it changes depending on how far away from the metal the little probe that's in the middle of this is. So it's very minute differences in the magnetic field that it's measuring. For ferrous materials, for non-ferrous materials, it does something else.
In my non-destructive testing life, we used ultrasonic mag particle and liquid penetrance. So the mag particle was the same thing. It was using the magnetic field. You had a yoke that would energize the area of steel, create a field, and any fissures in the metal distort the field. And if you spray it with this really light powdered metal, it would gather on the edges of the fissure. So you could locate almost invisible cracks just by the magnetic field. So if you had a break in the coating that allowed the field to kind of escape a little bit easier, it might throw off an indication.
Interesting. Hey, what if, okay, so you got the metal roof, because we're going off of this example, hail impacts on the roof. They're saying it's not functional damage, blah, blah, blah. What if you get a cameraed microscope and get down into those hail impacts or dents on that metal roof, and you're seeing the fibers where they're stretched on that metal roof more than non-affected areas, which would also, Matt, right? I'm not an engineer, nor am I holding myself out to be, but I'm using common sense here. Wouldn't that deteriorate the lifespan of that roof system as well?
I mean, it should. We do have an echo. Might be something on my end suddenly. Say something real quick, Remington.
Hello.
All right, it went away. I don't know what that was. It would. It was a real question on insurance policies. Is there some kind of a cosmetic damage exclusion or non-substantial damage exclusion or substantial damage endorsement of some kind that requires there to be a lot more damage involved? I've seen some of the functional damage exclusions for metal panel specifically state that unless there is an opening that allows water intrusion all the way through the entire roof assembly immediately, then it is not considered damaged. So in those cases, I don't think it would matter. But a lot of those endorsements have a time frame component to them. So it'll either say it must have created, meaning past tense, have created an opening that allows water intrusion all the way through. So it had to have happened the second that the thing happened, or it'll say if it will create, or if it creates something that it doesn't necessarily have to have happened already, but may allow it to happen over time. So if you create an opening as a result of this storm, if it creates an opening 10 years from now, but it's the result of that storm because the thickness of the coating has changed, then it should, with that kind of language, it should apply as functional damage. Ultimately, a lot of people are using magnifying glasses to take a look at the coatings to see cracks in the structure of the coating, because even the coating manufacturers will agree that the coatings that are fractured are functionally damaged, the coatings themselves. So using a magnifying glass might very well be a hell of a lot better than using this. I'm trying some things out with this to see if we can show additional stuff. There are some, zinc coatings, the galvanized, it's a crystalline structure. So anything that impacts that is going to show some breaks or some restructuring of it. Without a functional damage endorsement, waiver, whatever you want to call it, without that language, though, just any kind of a permanent change in the material that is detrimental to that material would be considered damage according to any policy that doesn't specify that it has to have a specific amount of damage. So yeah, broken paint coatings. This would be able to show the thickness of the paint. It won't show a break unless you happen to put the gauge. I don't know how narrow the field is. If it looks like it might have a point on the end, but it also has some trouble with the diameter of the hail hit. So I think that the radius of the indentation has to be a minimum amount for this to be able to work. And it says in here 5 to 20 millimeters. And I haven't sat down to figure out just how wide of a dent 5 millimeters would be in inches to see if it would even correlate with this, but it seems like it would be about half an inch, give or take. So if it's a half-inch indentation, then it should have at least a 5 millimeter radius. I don't know.
Well, what is 10 millimeters?
That makes sense just yet. I got to play around with it some more.
Is it 10 millimeters in a centimeter? 2.5 centimeters.
Yeah, in a centimeter. Yeah.
2.5
How big is it?
centimeters
In a centimeter compared to half an inch? It's like close, right?
Like 1.3.
25.4 millimeters per inch. So 12.65 millimeters would be half an inch. So if I'm looking at half an inch hail, then it's going to have a diameter that's 6 millimeters or so. And it should have the right minimum. I just have to calibrate this thing around and play around with it. I had a live show on this and I tried to see if I can get it to work during the live. It was giving me negative numbers, which really confused me. I don't know.
Interesting. I think these functional damage or cosmetic damage exclusions are only just going to get more prevalent. I
think that's true, especially since engineering firms are now teaching desk adjusters to identify damage over the computer over images. A desk adjuster is now certified by Hague
viewer
to evaluate whether or not something is damaged in an image.
Certified viewer. Doesn't say how good the picture has to be.
It doesn't say. I mean, I haven't taken the class, but it concerns me. What would you ask an attorney or an engineer if you had them in the hot seat during a deposition related to a desk reviewer situation? That's so weird. If you had a desk reviewer, if you had the adjuster that was at the desk and said that's not damaged by hail or that isn't consistent with hail damage, what would you ask them if they were the ones that made that call and they were never on site?
Well, I mean, aren't they somewhat doing that anyway if they send out an IA? I mean, we've heard it hundreds of times where an IA goes out to the property, tells whoever they're inspecting with, whether it's a contractor, public adjuster, and they say, yeah, there's damage on this roof, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to send it into the carrier. And then, 2 weeks later, a denial for no damage. I feel like they're doing that anyway.
They are. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm wondering how you would actually evaluate that. I think that I would love to see some deposition transcripts that go into how that actually works. I know that it's becoming more and more prevalent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, any good attorney should be able to just pick that apart.
Yeah.
How many of those are there?
Well, that IA didn't, he's not that experienced.
All right. You guys have any questions out there in the audience? Some bullshit you've come across recently that we could help uncover? We've got one hell of an attorney with us. We've got one hell of a contractor with us and an public adjuster right here. We could probably help you uncover what's going on from 3 different perspectives. All you have to do is post it in the comments.
Absolutely. Hey, Matt, is there anything from last week's episode that you think you need to, or
Get off
we
your
need to
chest.
touch base on? Get off your chest. Yeah. Hey, Matt doesn't stretch often. He just stretched.
I don't stretch enough. That's for damn sure. Every time I do something, I think, damn, I should have stretched before that. I'm in pain.
What were you biting your tongue over that now you would like to?
Yeah. No, I did not anticipate what happened during last week's episode. I didn't expect some of the things that were said to be said. So, I was talking to him about the word scope off screen. We were going through the language in his proposed new policy language for his carriers, and they were using the word scope to mean something that was completely unrelated. A shed that's damaged that wasn't brought up before is new scope for an appraisal. But the way he described scope last week could have included line items for the damaged roof. He described each individual line item as its own coverage because each component needs to be evaluated separately for coverage. I do not agree with that at all.
Well, no. I think one phrase I took away from this new proposed appraisal policy language that obviously is being introduced to carriers across the entire country. Let's be honest, right? I can read between the lines. In that language, supposedly in that language, it says that the appraisers have the ability to decide the extent of damages. To me, that I'm interpreting that as scope. Extent of damages, scope of damages. I mean, tomato, in my opinion. So I like the fact that phrase is being proposed to these carriers. And I think it's fair. Unless I'm missing something. I don't think I am, but I feel like scope and extent are, the same thing.
Now, unfortunately, I haven't posted the language for any of the listeners. It was shared with me. I was not necessarily given permission to share it with my viewers, and so I didn't send it out or post it anywhere. I may ask him if he would allow me to do that, but I'm not going to post it until I get a yay or a nay on that. Yeah. That's not the kind of person you do something and ask for forgiveness later on.
No. I mean, if we don't get it from him, we'll see it in policies. So we'll see it one way or another.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's in that, though, that I thought was really interesting and probably could have some long-term changes. And we didn't talk about this last week at all, but his language allowed for the carrier to pay for attorney's fees for the policyholder just to get the appraisal memo, the information on what's going to be appraised set before an appraisal. So the attorney's fees would be covered if all the fees were strictly to get into appraisal and set what the scope of the appraisal is going to be. Which is interesting. And that seems or sounds like a great thing for policyholders. But it's not such a great thing for public adjusters necessarily, if it would eliminate the need even more so for a public adjuster to be involved at that point. And the way that everything was set up in there being appraisable, what was appraisable, it really didn't make any sense that you would not end up in appraisal in just about any claim unless you agreed with their initial settlement offer. So it made it seem like appraisal was going to be a standardized part of a practice, almost the way that claims are settled going forward. And with that, you may need to have an attorney involved just to set what the scope of appraisal is. So I don't know, it could lead to interesting things. It definitely would change the landscape of stuff if most policies adopted that kind of language.
So you're suggesting that the appraisal language could potentially kind of eliminate the need of a PA, but take it straight to an attorney, is what you're saying, right? Because the attorney fees are covered. Could be.
It could.
So could an attorney then in turn hire a public adjuster as an expert opinion kind of thing? So it kind of still comes full circle. because an adjuster's probably got a lot more policy experience than an attorney. I mean, the attorney will look at it more contractually and what this means in the eye of the law, whereas a PA may look at it a little bit differently as far as coverages and building materials and, you know, a little different perspective. So, I mean, it may not eliminate, it just may change the route in which we get there.
I think that the concerning piece of this is that there before you get to appraisal, there's likely not anyone that is evaluating the policy language and whether or not it's being applied fairly. If a public adjuster isn't involved, more often than not, policyholder just takes the adjuster's word for it on what is or isn't covered by that policy.
Because you're in good hands.
As an agent, what's covered by the policy. I've had agents tell me that generally speaking, only functional damage is covered by the policy, and there's no mention of that anywhere in that policy. They really don't know what it is that they are selling more often than not. That's not everybody. That's a very strong generalization.
Yeah. And I find that, you know, they tend to lay on the variables in those, you know, a bit. Like, is it functional or not functional? Is it cosmetic, you know, or is it, you know, is that hail or a blister? Is that old hail or new hail? You know, they try to lay on that. We don't cover that because it's this. And then, you know, well, okay, how do we determine who's right on those two? You know, there's really no, this is where like your mag particle thing will come up.
I don't think that, I don't think it's a good thing that policyholders need public adjusters though either. So in a weird way, I mean, it sucks that someone does need a public adjuster, but if they want a public adjuster just to be able to present everything for them, not necessarily because the only way for them to gain coverage or to gain the benefits of their policy is to hire this professional, but just for the use of convenience, hiring a public adjuster would be great. It sucks that we are needed more often than not because coverage isn't applied correctly, because they're saying things like we only owe for accidental direct physical loss, and that doesn't apply to the surrounding materials regardless of whether it gets damaged during the replacement. And that's another thing
Here it comes.
that he said.
Oh, about the fitting the shingle.
You know, let me explain. He said, state of Texas applies concurrent causation and non-proximate cause. Remy, do you want to explain what that is, or shall I?
You can go for it, but just to say it in 10 seconds or 5 seconds, it's where if two causes of loss come together and one of them is excluded, causes the damages, then it's not a covered peril.
So if you've got concurrent causation, one's excluded and one's covered, they still owe for the covered peril in most cases, but you have to be able to separate those two causes in order to cover just the covered peril and not the uncovered peril. So if you can't separate them, then whichever one is the primary cause is going to be applied, and the way most policies work. Does that sound right for Texas?
Yeah,
I know I'm not a Texas attorney.
Yeah, I'm not a Texas attorney, so I want to be very clear about it. But there is case law out there where, for instance, I think the case I read with Texas was like a tile roof, and it had improper installation. A wind event did come by, and it was argued that if it wasn't for the improper installation, that there wouldn't have been damage to this actual roof system. Something of that effect. It was about 6 or 8 months ago when I read it. But anyway, it was saying that it's not a covered loss just because it was the main cause of the actual damages to the roof system itself. Go for it, Matt.
Yeah. So often you get an expert involved to try to determine what percentage of each cause is affecting it, and whichever one has the highest percentage is generally considered the cause of loss. If it's a non-covered cause of loss, even if there's a concurrent cause that is covered, if you can't separate those and the non-covered cause of loss is the cause, then it wouldn't be covered. So he mentioned wear and tear, and you mentioned just now improper installation. Those are the two that are used more often than not. And it's with that same mentality. If not but for the wear and tear, the age of the roof, would the wind have been sufficient to cause the damage? If not but for the improper installation, would the wind or the hail or whatever have been sufficient to cause damage to a sound roof? Where is the age line? Is sound a normal roof? Is that from day one? Would the wind or the hail have to be sufficient to cause damage to a brand new product, or does it? When is that cutoff to where the age matters?
Can you look
Is
at the
it-
other houses in the neighborhood as a reference? So if all the tile roofs all have some kind of damage, and then this one is too, but this carrier says it's improper installation, it's like, okay, is every house in here that's damaged improperly installed, or do I just have more damage because it's improperly installed? Could you use references?
Could you define wear and tear the way a policy works?
Wear and tear. Why don't they define wear and tear? Why don't they say it's never in my? I mean, I'm sure there's maybe some policies that have wear and tear defined, but I don't see it.
My shutter fell off because my screws corroded to the point that they just failed.
Like I said, there's probably some policies I just haven't read them, to describe wear and tear. I'd like to hear what the definition was, Matt.
So this is and it is actually not in the policy. It's in the policy notices that go with the policy that tell the policyholder how to read their policy. It's Farmer Smart Plan, by the way.
Got it.
And it says that, remember, wear and tear is not covered by this policy. So if your roof was required to be completely replaced prior to the loss, it would not be covered. So I take that to mean that wear and tear as a cause of loss applies when it no longer performs its function before the loss. So it is in a state of wear and tear. It is not serviceable. It is not performing its function. If it changes after the loss, that wouldn't be caused by wear and tear. Wear and tear as a cause of loss would mean that it by itself over age, condition, just because it's old, is no longer functioning. That's how I take that. So that's hey, Sarah, I was trying to get her to come on the show earlier. If you want to jump on this with us, I'll send you a link. Just throw me a thumbs up real quick or a yes in the comments. If you don't want to, that's cool.
She's probably out to dinner.
If they're going to say everything is wear and tear, and they're going to say, if not but for the wear and tear, then the hail or the wind would not have been sufficient to cause the damage. How do they know?
Yeah.
How do they determine that?
They don't want to. They want to hide behind it. It's hiding in that gray area. Is it hail? Is it not hail?
Brian says wear and tear is hard to define because there are too many variables that will contribute to wear and tear. Well, that's true. I think that for a layman, wear and tear just means it's got some age on it. Day one, materials have wear and tear, right?
A car depreciates the day you drive a lot, wear and tear.
So measuring wind at an address is impossible unless there is a anemometer there on the roof. It's impossible to know what the actual wind speed is at that address. Impossible. So knowing if the wind was sufficient to cause damage to a sound shingle is impossible for that claim.
But again, can't you use deductive reasoning? If the rest of if the whole neighborhood is being hit by contractors and adjusters all over the neighborhood, and you're going to try to say this one address isn't. Now, if you have a single house in the middle of a cul-de-sac that's got storm damage and nobody else does, again, deductive reasoning, what happened here.
I think it comes down to the definition of damage. If we're talking about an asphalt shingle and granule loss is a permanent change that is detrimental to the shingle, even if it's not considered functional damage, if the policy doesn't say shit about functional damage and there's granule loss, then hail definitely caused that. It is the primary cause of that granule loss. That granule loss in that small circular pattern would not have occurred if not but for the hail. Would the hail have been sufficient to cause granule loss like that if it was a sound shingle? Maybe not. But it sure as hell wasn't going to do that without the hail. I think it could be easily argued that the result is from the hail, not from the age.
The material becomes maybe more susceptible to damage based on age. An older shingle.
Things that cause it to. I don't know. It's a hard fight. I know that's something you don't have to do in a lot of states. Georgia's a proximate cause state. So how does that apply in Georgia?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Big wall.
Hey, look, even if the roof is 25 years with a 25-year shingle, if there's a hailstorm and that roof was more maybe acceptable to an extensive amount of damage versus if it was day one, it's still covered in Georgia. I've never had anybody try to fight me about that one way or another. And also the repairability of that roof, we always have those arguments as well. I don't like to use the word brittle because it's kind of one of those where everybody takes it out of their vocab, but for a proper repair to the actual older roof comes into play as well. And I know, Matt, you've gotten many roofs bought in the state of Georgia, using those tactics.
Yeah. I mean, avoid the word brittle. But that's easy.
Pliable is a good one.
Pliable is a much better word.
I told you I was going to get saying that word. But we all know it. We all know what we're talking about here. Just like pliability, that's a good way to put it there, neck tat, for sure. But we fight those all the time. And here's I always use this analogy when it comes to wear and tear, and it is the absolute truth. If you have a 50,000 mile tire, just being on those tires for 5,000 miles is wear and tear. It has wear and tear. So every roof out there has wear and tear, but the fact that that tire is now punctured in 4 different spots, it's more than likely probably because of nails or some other object that it ran over, just like a hail impact to the roof system. I always use that analogy with other attorneys because, they get a lot of attorneys are nerds and they get lost in the weeds, so to speak. And I'm just like, hey, I'm a common sense guy. You got to use some common sense here. So it helps. I don't know if that's going to help PAs or contractors, but it definitely helps on a common sense basis when I argue that with opposing counsel.
Yeah, it's definitely a state specific issue as a result, but that's why we brought this up because Steve Badger. Does he go by Steven? I don't know why I want to call him Steven suddenly.
Steve. I think Steve. Or just Badge.
Just a badge. Yeah, Badge. Badge comes from Texas, so he's talking about Texas this entire time. But yeah,
you gotta be careful with that nickname. He might get
he's going to try to prove that it's wear and tear or it's improper installation. He's going to have to show that. Brian brought up a funny question: how long till carriers require full weather stations at a property? I just looked up how much a weather station costs.
That would be an interesting one because it could disprove.
How many new contractors and public adjusters would be willing to spend $200 for every customer of yours just to put a weather station on their house? You could prove the next loss a little easier for them.
I mean, that could be a double-edged sword for the carrier because it could prove that yes, there was good weather there, or good in terms of bad, or it could say that it could help them say that no, that day I'm sorry, we got recordings that it's pretty calm and sunshiny, but what did I say?
Without modern roof oil spray, how does a homeowner prevent wear and tear and age?
They don't.
That stuff is such. I don't know. There's this roof renew. It's a plant oil based product that they're spraying on old roofs to allow the old shrunken brittle asphalt to reabsorb some oils that it's lost, some volatiles that it's evaporated over time that cause it to become brittle. It's supposed to reabsorb this oil and become pliable again. That's the idea behind this. I've done some minor testing at expos of some of these products where they had a shingle before it was sprayed and a shingle after it was sprayed, So it's had time to absorb. I don't think that they sprayed on site, although that would be a good question. That's a variable that I didn't really consider until this very moment that I'm saying it out loud. But I did my own little bitty pliability test on site there. And I actually found that in this very non-scientific, gut feeling how much pressure I'm putting on something test, there was more damage caused to the shingle that had oil on it.
Well, how would that last after? I mean, how would that hold up after a year in the Florida sun? Maybe it's got a different kind of reaction after a while.
I'm real curious to see what the gutters and the siding looks like after the application.
I
Shiny.
think they should send you some roof oil and you should give it an honest review.
I
Put
would
it in your
like to.
beard.
Hey, Eric, if you're involved in any of that shit, I'd love to do some actual testing of it. I've got my eye on a puller that's designed for ASTM pull tests of shingles to do some lift testing of different materials on roofs. And, you know, if someone were to send me some oil like that, I think that tester is only a couple $100 for a cheap one. Hopefully I don't need a bigger one than what's on there, but that'd be a lot of fun for me to test out.
Hear that, guys? Send Matt some oil.
To buy t-shirts. Jeez.
Send Matt some oil. He wants some oil, guys.
Yeah. Otherwise I'm going to start using my beard oil. What's sad is that in the industry, many adjusters don't understand concurrent causation, proximate cause, et cetera. That's true. That's why you got to teach them. That's why you got to teach them. Of course, a contractor is not going to be able to do that very well. That might be considered just crossing the line, although you wouldn't necessarily be talking about that particular case. And engineers are often describing what the proximate cause is. They're determining proximate cause in most engineer reports without even telling you that's proximate cause. Sometimes they use the term proximate cause, but most of the time they just tell you one cause of loss and they ignore all the other concurrent causation. And basically they're naming what they've determined as a proximate cause, which is almost always wear and tear or improper installation. Go figure. Anecdotally, it seems that the replacement for an incomplete underwriting process might be exclusionary language and protocol from extra contractual guidelines. Just my speculative opinion. I feel like I needed to read that in a British accent for some reason.
She's good at wording.
I don't know what a complete underwriting process would look like because, I mean, it's not like they ever get that close to these properties. They're doing drive-by type inspections. So
if at all.
Yeah.
All right.
I've had it where, you know, in discovery, I asked for underwriting files and I've seen a full blown underwriting file and this thing is detailed. Usually they do it on commercial roofs for obvious reasons versus homeowners policies. But I mean, they have a full 30-page report on the roof itself before the risk is insured. It's pretty crazy. And I think just because they spend so much money on, and it's actually a third party that they use a lot of times, but, you know, some of the bigger guys, you know, they love to say wear and tear and previous damage or prior damage and before the policy period and everything else. But they don't, you know, tend to do their due diligence of insuring the risk. And they use that to their benefit by saying it was prior damage, which is pretty amazing how they can do that.
So
do you think that an engineer or any expert would be able to identify when something is in a state of wear and tear if they aren't aware of what model or manufacturer the product is?
You know, that's a good question. I think so. I think potentially somebody can go up there and be like, this thing is, I mean, you know, we're going off of roofs all the time, but like, think about some other material, like think about like a blanket or something that's like 40 years old or whatever it might be. You're like, this thing can't be used anymore, you know, or like a mattress, right, that you see on the highway. But I'm just trying to think about like other ways where it's like, I don't need to know the manufacturer or, you know, the warranty on this particular product to tell you that this thing's shot. You know, I think those are extreme circumstances, but I think an engineer they want all the information possible to come and formulate their conclusion, or they're supposed to. And I think definitely one of the facts they need to know is the type of shingle or the type of material and the warranty that's behind it. I think that needs to go into one of the variables to come to their conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to describe functional damage as something that reduces its expected service life, then they would have to know what it is to know what the expected service life is, right?
Yeah. All right. So Remington, what happens when all these
finding that out, but they're saying that it hasn't affected its expected service life, then I feel like that is one of those variables that is absolutely required to know in order to make a statement like that. That's how I feel about it.
So Remington, what happens when all these lifetime
Right.
shingles start coming up damaged that hit the market a couple years ago?
Well, maybe they weren't true lifetime shingles. Maybe that's not on the engineer. Maybe that's on the manufacturer. I'm just being honest. Hey, people say that, something should last X amount of time and it doesn't. But
well, if they say it's a
I'm with you.
25-year shingle and it's 26 years old and they say, oh, it's exceeded its lifespan, what happens when this new lifetime HTZ gets damaged, 10 years from now, and we got to replace those?
Yeah, I think, and I think everybody who actually is reasonable, if it's a 25-year shingle and it's 26 years old, it doesn't mean that the life expectancy is completely done and shot. Like, I don't think that roof, it automatically goes into the category of being completely shot and worn out. It's kind of like, hey, you're supposed to, hey, this oil change will be good for 3,000 miles. Doesn't mean you can't go to 5. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, seriously.
So that's your service life, 3,000 miles for the oil, but it's going to go 5.
Yeah.
And if you reduce the 5 down to 4 because of additional wear caused by an accident on a part that has lost some of its tolerance slightly, then you haven't reduced the expected service life of the oil. So it hasn't been functionally damaged, but you have reduced its actual service life. But the way that they define that, when they use the word expected, it changes quite a bit. I think most people miss that when they're reading these definitions that the engineers come up with that definitely limit the amount of coverages that would ever come out of a policy.
Yeah. Well,
lifetime shingle is a marketing term.
Yeah. Well, years ago, they did some experiments on cars, riding on the same analogy here with the oil change every 3,000. They put used oil into the same car repeatedly for like 10 plus years, and it never affected the service life. It still ran the same as it did. So the 3,000 mile oil change, as long as your oil level stays where it's supposed to be, it can be as old as it wants, and it still runs just fine.
Is it just me, or does it feel like Remington is like the angel in this group because of how white his background is? And we're the devils. Yeah.
You guys are Darth Vaders over there. Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all interesting. I think everybody just needs to use common sense, and I think that's going to help out everybody. And that's on both sides. I don't care if you're an IA, a desk adjuster, a contractor, a PA, an attorney, defense counsel. You just got to use some common sense on this stuff, and everybody uses some of this to their benefit, given it every different situation. So I don't know, just throwing that out there. What is Sarah saying about Brian's comment?
That reminds me of shake and pay parametric insurance. I don't know what that is. Once again, Sarah has made me feel retarded.
This should be hers.
She really does. To be honest, my wife makes me feel that way pretty often too. Hashtag. For those of you that don't know the story, Joey just posted hashtag age clips. If you and don't do this while teaching a course on shingles like I did.
With 5 monitors. I tried to pull it up the other day.
Monitors surrounding the room. Don't Google search H clips without putting a hyphen in between H and clips, because H clips also stands for hardcore porn clips, and I didn't know that. So my safe search was not on that computer. Yeah,
it's H clips, no space, no hyphen.
Thanks for showing that on the show. I appreciate that. That's great.
Hey, and just a little 10 seconds of knowledge. A parametric insurance policy is very untraditional, and it's one where if it's already set, if there's wind speeds of 100 mile an hour at your property, we're going to buy the roof no matter what the damages are. Things like that. That's what it is.
So Brian originally said weather station, property cameras, whole house water monitors. When is being proactive cross a line of absurdity as well? I mean, if you have to prove your loss and you're dealing with an absurd situation that a carrier can use against you because the terminology isn't very clearly defined, I mean, they're using the ambiguity against you. They do that. It's obvious.
Is the ambiguity supposed to work in favor of the policyholder since they have no control over how the contract's actually written?
It's supposed to, but only if you get an attorney involved. Remington can win that argument. You're not winning that argument, Nick Tattoo. I'm probably not winning that argument as a PA. Remington can win that argument. So now they have to hire a professional to prove that there is ambiguity in the policy. And it's possible that he doesn't win because it's going to be up to a judge. So you could argue it.
And what if that judge has that same carrier?
It is in the insurance company's best interest to have less information and keep it real vague. That's why they don't give their insurance adjusters IR cameras or moisture meters. I don't know why this represents those things, but it did in my head. So anyway, parametric insurance is a type of insurance for earthquakes. If it shakes, they send out automatic payments. Shake and pay is trademarked by a carrier, I think. We're not in earthquake zones. I've never had an earth movement or an earthquake or a sinkhole claim.
I like shake and pay.
Yeah, sounds cool.
It's
shake and pay.
I'm try that next time. Just, you know, the money falls out of pockets.
Yeah, it's what I want to do to every adjuster.
Not every. The majority.
Going back to Brian's comment, I think it was Brian, but he said, about being, I guess, like overzealous on proving the loss or so forth. What if just like a homeowner every 3 years has somebody come out, or every 2 years has somebody come out and does just a quick inspection of the roof and documents the condition of the roof? And I think that would be very beneficial, in my opinion, to where, a year, 6 months later, there's a storm event, and now there's obviously different damage. It kind of goes to the same realm as, if you haven't done this, viewers, I don't care who you are, you need to do this. Walk around your house, take a video of all your contents, just in case. It's one of those. It's like, look, I had this, right? Just in case a fire happens, something like that, you have this proof. So I think it's something that maybe homeowners or commercial building owners should maybe start doing a little bit.
I mean, imagine if you are a contractor or a public adjuster and you go and you get on every roof in your area every year. How many claims do you come across?
Wow.
Have a subscription for your community,
Why not?
And
completely free.
And it shouldn't just be
area next. Talk to the HOA presidents. We're not asking you to let us look for damages. We're not asking for repairs. We're just providing photo information. Yeah. And then if you find something that is very obvious, you might mention it to them without a sales pitch at all. You're getting on so many, inevitably, you would end up with some clientele and some decent information as a baseline for the next time a storm comes through for other people.
Yeah. Tie it into the HOA fee.
Right. And then get yourself a subscription for Hail Trace. Put everybody's information in there. And then every time a storm comes through, go into Hail Trace, click on that storm, and print out all the contacts that you've been on that have been affected by that storm. Give them a call. Let them know they've been hit by a storm that seemed like it might have been severe enough to do some damage. Since you already have the baseline photos, you can go take a look at their property now. And if there is any new damage, you'd be able to identify it as new, and there'd be no issues with any of the wear and tear, improper installation, or whatever, because you have solid documentation. That would be fantastic. It would require a lot of upfront work.
The Storm Alert Network.
Storm Alert Network. It's not a bad idea.
About it.
I like that idea, right? So, you need to immediately trademark what John just said.
Yeah, and, I do. Of course, I thought of it a year ago. I actually talked to Derek Klein about it at Hail Trace, about having building the database, be able to send out text messages immediately to those affected in that zone. this could happen nationwide.
If you happen to be in an area that gets solid near map photos done regularly, some of those near map images allow you to zoom in so close that you might as well put a drone on it yourself, coming from an aircraft. You can even make a 3D model you can turn around. You can go back in time on those. Near map is an amazing program, but it's not in every area. It's actually in very, very few areas. But if you happen to be in one of those areas, you wouldn't even have to do this.
Yeah.
Yes, that model we already know.
Or you could do it because then they learn your face and your name. And who are they going to trust? Chucking a truck that just showed up, or you that's been crawling their roof and around their property for the past 3 years?
Brian's brother-in-law does annual property inspections in the Midwest for corporate relocation clients for condition repair and underwriting purposes. Corporations not want their employees in a hazard unless they're an insurance company, right? Remington, when an insurer argues the age of condition or the responsibility of the homeowner, despite under contract as RCV, does the insurer have a responsibility to verify age and condition?
No,
I think I know what he's asking. I'm going to explain it differently because it's a little bit ambiguous the way he wrote that.
Okay.
Maybe he's not even asking this, but if he isn't, I'm asking this of you. If an underwriting process or inspection happens and they write the policy, and then later on an event occurs and they say that they're not covering it because of wear and tear, but they did the underwriting and they've been collecting premiums this entire time. Does that mean that they can no longer say it's wear and tear because they didn't tell the policyholder after their underwriting inspection that it was in a state of wear and tear? Or that they can't say that it's improper installation because they accepted the property in its condition has been collecting premiums this whole time?
This happens all the time.
This is an argument that I hear on Facebook a lot.
Yeah, well, if the carrier knows that there's improper installation, but they're still insuring that risk, to me, that is on that carrier. But it matters what the loss is as well. I think that comes into play.
I think your point on whether or not they know is really the key. So I can tell you that
it almost be fraud.
Argument.
Because they're saying that we're gonna insure your risk, we're gonna insure your roof, although in the back they know that there's improper installation, and if anything comes up with a roof issue, that they're gonna go to that exclusion immediately, and you're paying premiums for not covering your roof. So to me, that's fraud. That's a definition of fraud.
But the underwriting inspection is not required to identify whether or not something is properly installed, or wear and tear. If they say that they're not going to insure the property because of the age of the roof or something, that's something that's built into your application generally. But as they go by to look at the general condition from the street, that there's no guarantee that they're going to find out that there's improper installation. So if they don't know about it, I think that it's a stupid argument that a lot of public adjusters make, because that underwriting investigation is no guarantee that everything's installed correctly. There'd be no way possible to know if everything is installed correctly. So that inspection doesn't warrant that your property is completely installed correctly, so there's no issues.
Matt, you never walked a roof and be like,
they are willing to underwrite that property and provide coverage based on that policy language.
You've never walked a roof and
thought, I think you're right. I never thought about it that way.
What, me?
I'm going to interrupt you again if you speak real quick, just because I think it's fun at this point.
You never thought about it what way? About what John
said? They knew about it. I never thought about that aspect. Yeah. If they did know about it and then they still took the premium in, I would argue that, I don't know if I'd argue anything as fraud. I'm not comfortable enough with that term, to be frank. But I do think it's bullshit if they were pulling that, and I'd probably end up calling you.
Matt, I don't use the word fraud or bad faith a lot. That would be, look, they know, they're telling you this roof is insured, while in their back pocket know that they're going to come with an exclusion if there's an issue with the roof or a storm comes through. To me, that's fraud, man.
Yeah, I'm just not comfortable enough with being able to identify it for myself.
Got it.
Not necessarily the use of the term. I don't know what is or isn't fraud fully yet. It feels like a very fluid term at times. It depends on who you're talking. It seems subjective. And it might be that it's state to state, but isn't it a federal thing?
I mean,
So
yeah, there can be. It's common law is what we call it, where there's a direct 4 elements of fraud that need to be there, pretty much across the board, So it's tested in every state, usually on the MBE test when you're taking the bar exam, and the MBE is nationwide. So, those common law elements of fraud are taught across every law school. John, what were you going to say, bud? You were going to say something.
Thank you, Ramsey. Ramsey's always here for me. No, I'll say, Matt, you can't walk a roof and tell if it's been installed properly or not. I mean, don't you teach a class on this?
I mean, we do. We teach a lot of classes.
We do.
There's a
I
commonality.
told a guy the other day he didn't have a roof claim because it was improperly installed. I said the only damage I see here is from the solar being installed and or improper installation. Like, you don't have a claim.
Yeah, but when they start saying that there's no storm-related damage, it's either wear and tear or improper installation or previous damage, and they just keep listing every other catch-all type issue, then you know that they didn't really inspect it to determine what the actual cause of loss is, though, right?
Right. But if you're talking about preliminary inspections, going into underwriting,
no one's going to do that.
Why could Big Red not team up with a handful of contractors in that area and say, hey, look, give me a real inspection on this, on what you think it is, and they can identify material, whether it's discontinued or repairability. Huh?
Why would they do that?
Exclude it, and they could tell that homeowner, look, before I insure your roof, you have to replace your roof. And that I would be good with, because you're being upfront and honest. Okay, my roof is
I'd be ecstatic if this happened. The likelihood of it happening is so low because it isn't financially sound for an insurer to do that.
They don't have to pay it on a damn roof claim. And then they go in and they're
paying, the insurance company ends up paying up.
They're putting the responsibility on the insured prior to. They're saying, look, you've got a wear and tear scenario with a discontinued shingle. I don't feel comfortable insuring this in case of, because you're more susceptible to damage. Replace your roof. I'll give you full coverage. Until then, you got ACV only or very limited or whatever, however they want to word it.
You're a policy holder, and now you're going to go to a different insurance company and apply there.
Maybe not.
They want to bring in as much money as possible.
They probably already have insurance.
Honest, determined that the property wasn't insurable because it was in a state of improper installation.
Okay, so the
they didn't
caveat,
have to know that up front.
The caveat is that the new carrier.
I like your idea. I just don't see it happening.
The new carrier doesn't put that in public record in any kind of way. I know carriers have this database where all claims go, but if someone's shopping for new insurance, they still have insurance with somebody else. Well, if there's some storm damage related and it's also under this wear and tear and it's currently fully insured, why not file a claim within that inspection? If you find damage, legit damage, get that covered, get carrier A to replace it. Carrier B then pretty much covers a property that's got a brand new roof on it. Low liability. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just some dumbass contractor.
I think it would be a very fair system. That would be fantastic. I don't remember what I said to him. Inspection was not exhaustive at addressing glaring problems. If they do inspections up front and they find problems, they often do. In Florida right now, if your roof is over a certain age, they're going to say, we're not going to insure you until you replace the roof.
Yeah, I've seen that before. And I think, that's solid. If you're going to, insure a risk as a carrier, assess it. Figure out what your liability is. If you just take it on, you've taken on liability. That's my opinion. But again, I'm in a basement.
The 3 elements of fraud, according to criminologist Dr. Donald Cressy. Sarah has the benefit of having Google at her fingertips right now, and I think she's using it to make me feel retarded. I think that's what she's doing. I think that's her
there to Google.
Funny. And hey, there is a difference between civil and criminal fraud as well. So just throwing that out there.
Setting a baseline inspection would be good risk management, but burden shifted to homeowner and real estate. Some of the appraisal type inspections go on record for an address. You know, if an insurance company would actually require inspections to be performed prior to the purchase of a home, if it's a policy where they just purchased the home and they require a copy of the inspection report, that would be something. At least they don't even require that.
Yeah,
I'll say this though: those home inspectors don't really know what the hell they're looking at.
Don't want that information so much.
Yeah, those home inspectors don't really know what the hell they're looking for. And you got guys like us that are in this world for carriers, or however you want to look at it. But we could be here for carriers and taking the knowledge we know and say, hey, this might be a little heavy one for you. I don't know if you want to carry this shit on your shoulders. We could be an asset to them.
It would be. 15 years in Florida is the new rule. For anybody that doesn't know, there is a new law in Florida that passed in an emergency session. There's a lot of caveats to that. We've got a whole video on it on the Listen to This Bull channel on YouTube. You go to youtube.com/listen to this bull, and you'll find that 1 hour session. But what she's referring to, what I was alluding to, insurance companies are no longer allowed to increase your rates or not renew or not write a policy if your roof is less than 15 years old just because of the age of your roof. But if it is 15 years old or older, then they're allowed to non-renew or not write a policy. But they will allow you to have an inspection done by someone that is approved by the insurance company, by the way, to go out and evaluate whether or not your roof has at least 5 years of life left. And if it's determined to have 5 years of life left or more, then they cannot non-renew or not write a policy just because of the age of your roof until, I guess, 20 years old happens. But then you'd have to have someone come back out and say at least 5 more years or so. But if these people are approved by the insurance company, then it's entirely possible that they are swayed by the insurance company's money to say that it is not going to last 5 years. Or if they happen to be a contractor that wants to get business for replacing a roof, they might say that it's got that. But it's also a subjective idea anyway. How do you know how many years life is left in a roof?
I've been approached that several times. Like, hey, can you come certify this roof? Usually it's real estate. Can you certify this roof? I got a buyer that, wants to buy it, but it's got an older roof. And it's like, I'm not taking that liability. I spent my entire career in this industry arguing non-repairable roofs. If it's a repairable roof, I don't argue it because I just repair it and move on. But I can't go in and switch positions. So if you want me to certify this roof, be ready for whatever answer I have. If I tell you nope, be ready for it.
Sarah brought up that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac require inspections, but the insurance companies don't require you to send them to them every time, which was
you forgot the bro.
My point, brah. But Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac also require RCV benefits, and if you've got only ACV benefits for a portion of your property, is it still an RCV policy? Does it still meet those
RPS?
Like RPS, or even if it's ACV, there are policies that say for hail and wind losses on a roof that is more than 12 years old, it's at ACV, even though it's in an RCV policy. That happens a lot. I don't know. What do you think, Remington? Is it still an RCV policy if it's got some ACV?
No, I think it's a hybrid. I don't think you can call it a RCV across the board. I don't.
Yeah. I don't know if Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are ever going to take up arms on that situation or not. I kind of doubt it because I feel like they probably should have already, and they haven't. I know a lot of people have gone down that path, including yours truly. I got nowhere. Yep, we are an asset. I inspect for a couple different brokers before they insure old roofs. That's fantastic. But that's because it's already old and they're aware of it during the application. They're not necessarily having you go out to look at every roof to see if it's improperly installed.
Look, I know it's 7:05. We're already running over. I'll give you this quick little rundown. I had two houses. The house I just moved out of this house here. My agent that covered my old house wanted to cover this house, but it was only American National, right? Any roofs over 15 years old are ACV only or RPS. They got RPS schedule. I said, no, I'm not doing that because I don't want to be in an RPS situation because I know I'm going to take on some damage here in the next couple of years. It's bound to happen. It's inevitable. So I went with a different carrier. Her argument was there is some maintenance involved in owning a home, and you need to be able to pay for that. So, okay, fair enough. I have enough maintenance. My upstairs AC went out tonight, so I got to take care of that maintenance. But my whole thing is my roof is a 30-year roof. I'm 15 years into it. If it fails tomorrow, theoretically, I should have had 15 more years to prepare for that maintenance scenario, right?
Sure.
So at what point does your insurance company, who's there for your just-in-case scenarios, need to be able to step in versus when, okay, I should replace that? You know?
I don't know.
It's kind of...
You know, if a covered peril occurs during that time and they were pulling in your money, then
and they're pulling it in.
No point would they have to
It's
step
a
in.
big dog insurance company, and they're pulling it in. I'm paying dearly for this policy, but it's because I know that I'm going to need them.
I guess.
Huh?
All right. I think this is a funny comment from Neil. Will a life insurance company certify that I have 5 years or more life left?
I have to come to a full examination, Neil. I'll come to a full examination.
I mean,
I'll
technically
certify.
they are, though, right? On life insurance, because they are ensuring that you are going to live that long.
Yeah, they go off of statistics.
Yeah, so
But,
I mean, that's
but Neil's is a funny comment.
it's a funny comment, but
yeah.
Right after I said that, I think they actually do that. They do. I said do on.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to my full inspection that I'll perform. Okay.
They will put a lot of 2-year exclusions in place. That's interesting. All right. Hey, guys. It has been our full hour. I want to get something out of the way real quick before anybody jumps off of this thing, though. We just put up the Public Adjuster 102 Advanced Residential Policy Interpretation class. It's a 2-day online course webinar series that is coming up later on this month for the first time. I know a lot of people were wanting me to schedule this out, so it is going to be on August 22nd and 23rd. It's on the National Claims Institute website, nationalclaims.institute. I want you guys to be aware of that. And also, the week after that, the Composition Shingle Roof Inspection Certification course that we do every month is on August 29th through September 2nd. That particular session, if you buy tickets to that August session, you also get the free course from John Senak, Discontinued Shingle Masterclass. He's coming to Florida to teach his class on Thursday of that week. So if you're coming for the comp shingle class for that session, you get that class for free. And it's an amazing class. I've been to it like 5 times because he says me speak at these things. And I got to tell you, there's a very large amount of information, which is why I like John so much. He definitely goes deep into subjects the way that I do. I really enjoy it. So that is a twofer. And that's $600 normally. You get it for free. If you guys haven't noticed, all of our prices across the board dropped. We temporarily reduced all the prices at National Claims Institute. They will go back up at some point, but they've all been dropped almost by half across the board. So you get already a very, very cheap composition shingle roof inspection course, but then you also get a $600 value of John Sanek's class for free. But don't forget about the Advanced Residential Policy Interpretation class. That is the week before that on the 22nd and 23rd. It's the first time we're doing that one. And it's online. You don't have to travel for that guy. So those are the 2 exciting things that are coming up for the National Claims Institute, the primary sponsor for the Listen to This Bull show. And you guys should totally buy some shirts. You can barely tell that this is a bull in galaxy form.
Wait, wrong one.
Not the NCI shirt.
Hey,
Listen to this bull needs to make some money at some point.
Definitely buy some shirts, folks. But
Yeah.
I just want to throw it out there. I've sat in a handful of classes at NCI, and I walk away every hour learning more new knowledge and tactics that I use. And everybody in the classroom, I just talked to them during breaks. I'm like, hey, so what do you think about that session? And everybody walks away with nuggets of gold of information. So I encourage you to go check it out. No doubt, 100%.
I just pictured everybody walking out of the class waddling, like with their legs a little bit wider than before.
Full of information, so full of it. You had a fact in every orifice you have.
Nuggets everywhere, just flopping around, just nuggets of gold.
And actually, that is a caveat. You know, we are going to be offering some, you know, online. Maybe possibly we're working with some VR stuff, maybe for you know widespread attendance, but. Yeah, I mean, the in-person stuff, you get to corner us. You know, guys like Remington, you can catch them in the bathroom, you know, and
don't do that because I'm going to require you to show your face because I can't teach to a blank name tag screen. I need some interaction. This is a conversational tone class, so no bathrooms.
yes,
please, that'd be cool. But yeah, good idea. I mean, if you want to show us your gold nuggets, I guess, but outside of that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've always found from going from student to partner to, you know, involved, it's the behind the scenes stuff is so valuable, you know, to be there in person, talk to guys like Remington, Matt, Frank, whoever is in there at that time. I mean, you get a ton more very specific kind of information, you know, versus just a class, which is general, but in depth.
For sure.
That's what I loved.
Buy some t-shirts, says Matt. Get some Galaxy t-shirts, folks. And everybody.
I don't know if they're online or not. These are my wife's specials.
There you go.
Fan of the Galaxy print stuff.
No,
I like it.
Maybe some good ones.
You guys, we'll see you next Tuesday at 6